Hey guys, welcome to the Jungle Brothers podcast. Today, Paulie and myself are joined by Vic Hawksley. Vic is an old friend of ours from the gym game and from the movement realm. He owns his own gym up on the North Shore of Sydney. It's called Anatomy in Motion. It's a boutique place and he's doing amazing things there, strength, mobility, movement. And that was what we want to talk to Vic about today. We both operate similar businesses with a similar ethos in the same city, though being on the other side of the bridge, it's like he's on the other side of the planet. However, we wanted to dive into that, his opinions and his views around developing strong, mobile bodies that are capable of high movement capacity and have good body awareness. And so we had a really good discussion around that. If you're a coach who's coming up in the industry, if you're someone who's looking to improve your own movement, your own strength, I think you'll find a lot of great takeaways in this chat. Hope you enjoy it. As always, if you do enjoy the show, please take a screenshot of it, post it, share it with a friend. It helps to support what we're doing. Thank you for listening. Enjoy this episode with Vic Hawksley. Hey guys, welcome to the Jungle Brothers podcast. I'm Joey, and today, Paulie and our guest Vic Hawksley are all coming in from different sides of the internet. How are you, gents?
Good.
Thank you. Good. How are you, Joe?
Mate, I'm good. Really good. It's we're normally sitting next to each other when we do these things, so this is a novelty one for us. Vic Hawksley, mate, you are an old friend of ours from the movement realm and the Sydney gym scene, and you live on the other side of the bridge, which is about 15 minutes away, but it's practically fucking other side of the planet because we don't like. I can remember the last time you came to our gym was about 10 years ago, and we've still never been to your gym. But been watching what you're doing. Obviously, I've always had huge respect for you and seen a lot of similarities between what your ethos and ours. So, mate, it's great to catch up. How you doing?
Yeah, good, man. I mean, as good as we can be in, given circumstances, I guess, the weird times, but just rolling with it,
What is your situation now? Like, obviously the gym is closed. How are you making things work with the current restrictions and whatnot?
Obviously, we're just limited to doing one-on-ones. So we know right at the start, when they said it was going to be 2 weeks, we were like, yeah, okay, that's a great case scenario, but we planned for the worst. So what we did was we kind of, reached out to party planners and basically hired this massive marquee, right? A full-blown marquee, got it on the cheap, and we were like, okay, we'll just kind of do, what we can. And that served us really well. We basically kind of have that set up in the car park and then, open air, basically do one-on-ones out of there. And then we supplement that with, 4 virtuals a week. So then, we reach out to the people that obviously can't make it into the car park. And that's also allowed us the opportunity to open our virtual doors to our wider community and family. So it's been, as I said, we've been making the most of it.
That's pretty cool, man. The car park is a part of the building that you're in?
Correct. Yeah. So it's just at the back, so kind of all the equipment and stuff is pretty straightforward. We had some spare gym mats lying around from the last rebuilds we went through last year. So they came in handy. I'm glad I didn't throw them out. So they went straight into the marquee, and we've got a little, I think it's 15 by 3 meter, kind of marquee. And yeah, it's a pretty awesome setup.
Mate, well done. I go past a few gyms and stuff doing the PT thing when they have that little bit of outdoor space, and it's cool. Like if you have if you can do it, it's such a great way to go about managing shit right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it just gives that a little bit of more of a familiarity with the people coming in as well, right? It's like, similar sort of area, kind of, and in these weird times, that's like one consistent thing, it's like, okay, I'm still kind of going to that one place, kind of to move and train or whatever.
Paulie touched on it before I hit the record button, and I cut you guys off because I wanted to record it. But before COVID, you lost the roof to your gym.
Yeah, freak accident, kind of. So this happened literally on my birthday last year. So I will never forget it. It was a beautiful present. Yeah, basically the lid of the building basically kind of just opened up like a can of tuna essentially, and we were watered, obviously flooded and all that kind of stuff. And this was like basically about maybe 4 or 5 weeks prior to us all going into lockdown with COVID. So COVID wasn't a real thing just yet in people's minds. So our roof blew off. And by the end of the month, start of March, kind of basically we were, there was a toilet war saga and then there was shutdown.
Holy shit, man.
That was just wild weather, huh?
Yeah, it was just crazy, kind of, no one could have seen it. It was just a wild thing, But as always, in hindsight, it was preparing us for what, was coming, right? That was the silver lining, if you like. I think we are an expert in changing business models on the fly. Every week we can come up with a new model.
I feel that one.
Yeah, that adaptability is a real small business kind of characteristic, isn't it? Like being able to adapt.
Yeah, for sure.
So that didn't have anything to do with the bushfires, did it? Like any weather around that time? This was after the bushfires, just pre-COVID.
Correct. So effectively, the roof had nothing to do with the bushfires, I guess, but, it was just a freak of nature, gale force winds that particular weekend. It just didn't stop raining sideways. It was kind of just crazy. And for some weird reason, air got a little bit underneath the roof. And then obviously the rest is history that the whole thing came off. But it was just after the bushfires. Yeah. We had a huge tree fall down next to us as well, because obviously everything had been dry. And then suddenly this weekend, even though everything got wet and obviously with the wind, boom, everything knocked around.
Mother Nature was just like, I'm the boss.
That's it.
Remember it. Well, you bounced back in a great way. And it looks like the gym's, I can see it in the background of this video call, but I've seen it online. It's more or less back into the place that you had it before.
Yeah, that's right. So, as I said, there's always silver lining, right? We'd been in the space nearly 2 years at this point before the roof blew off. And obviously we knew every nook and cranny, right? And so this, effectively we had to do remodeling essentially and obviously, get the whole thing built up again, and that gave us the opportunity to kind of then, use our experiences and make few, modifications, few updates and stuff like that. And we used the opportunity to do that, so we've got a little bit more space, we're a little bit smarter, with how we use this small space even better. So yeah, as I said, it was a blessing in disguise. And yeah, we came back, kind of looking a little bit different, doing the same thing.
Thank God for insurance, huh?
Yeah, this was this was our insurance, and then this was like the landlord's insurance. It was just, there was so many insurance at play as well. It took quite some time to kind of, everything to kind of work. But as I said, that COVID period, we were in lockdown for I don't know how long. So it took all of that time to get all this thing just in the background happening. So we didn't actually move back in the physical space till I believe end of August last year.
Okay.
So yeah.
And so your gym is in Narrabeen,
Mm-hmm.
which is North Shore, just over the bridge, for anyone that's obviously from this side of the bridge. But can you give us a little kind of understanding of how the gym works? Obviously, I got a bit of a, we have an impression, but for the listeners, like, how does it operate? Kind of how many people you got there? Are you running classes, PTs? What's that look like?
Cool. So it's a little bit of a weird system, kind of a weird model, but something that we've come to love, and this is the way we do things. Effectively, what we do is we do personalized training supplemented with group training. So everybody here at AIM has to do personalized training once per week at the bare minimum, right? So effectively what we say is, once a week, rain, hell or shine, you're going to be working on the things you want to and you need to. And then obviously we have, group classes with different themes, different projects and so on that we can then either pick the frequency up from, come and play and start a new project or whatever it is. So we supplement group training essentially. So that's the kind of the rough way that we, kind of works. Personalized training with group training as supplementation.
Is that personalized training done one-on-one, or is it like a custom program and they all working a class of people on different programs?
Cool. So there's obviously, the one-on-one model that we normally have, kind of, which is very limited. And then what we have is 4-on-1. So we call it squad. So effectively it's, 4 individuals in a space, 4 completely different programs according to their intent and context. And, it's actually pretty hard. It's harder than probably running a one-on-one session, right? Because you've got 4 individuals to manage essentially. So we call it squad, which is 4-on-1. And then our group training is limited to 12-on-1 coach or 16-on-2 coaches.
I like it. I like it a lot.
So it's like, and we have obviously cap on our membership. Our space isn't designed for, the masses kind of thing. So, we never wanted to be the 200, members gym kind of thing. We've got a very small capacity, and we just want to keep things tight and scale in a different way.
Have you still got the AIM Silverback? Is he still training with you?
Yeah, for sure. The Silverback, yes. And in fact, he is the one who has redesigned this place twice, and basically project managed this gym. He's the one who created the space.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
Yeah. So he was the first one who walked up these stairs, and within, I'm thinking maybe 3 hours of being in this space, I haven't got a creative mind, and within 3 hours, he sent me this drawings. He was like, okay, we can have these monkey bars going this way. I'm thinking maybe squat rack this way so you can keep open space. And I'm like, what the hell is happening here? I'm like, yeah, let's do that.
That guy, Paulie? You see him on Vic's Insta?
Yeah, for like years now. He's amazing. I love him.
That's it. And
I really like that video you had of him where you'd obviously just taught him how to do a forward roll safely, and he flies off he flies out of his like front porch onto the grass and like forward rolls out to the footpath.
Yeah, in fact, it was a couple of years ago, and we had Sean, obviously our mutual friend, right? Sean from Newcastle. I forget his second name now, but Sean Wood, I think, Mr. Ninja, right? And he did a parkour masterclass for us. And of course, we had the, bolting and things like that, kind of involved. And the next thing I know, I'm going to go say hi to Silverback, and he's jumping out of his house. It's just crazy, kind of. So no, it was pretty cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Arming people with parkour tactics is probably more dangerous than teaching someone jiu-jitsu submission techniques. It's like as soon as you teach someone like a forward roll or like a fucking wall climb or a vault or something, they just want to be practicing that shit.
That's it. And it's solely because, unlike jiu-jitsu, you don't need anybody else.
That's right. You fuck yourself up for free. We actually, we were walking through the park the other night, and I saw two young blokes, I don't know, teenagers, playing with some parkour stuff. And I'm guessing they'd just been watching it on YouTube because they looked real tentative, but they were like scaling these handrails and like climbing down this little wall and stuff. And you could see it was kind of heavy. Like the wall that they were climbing down was enough that if you fell, it would hurt, it was 2.5 meters or something. But I thought that's fucking cool. Like, good on you guys. That's what it should be. You should be out there experimenting. And particularly at a time like this when gyms are closed, it's like no better time to do it.
Yeah, for sure. I guess that's how kind of we started, kind of doing things too, right? Or learning things. We started to experiment with stuff that we thought was cool initially. And obviously then we were like, okay, let's take this a little bit deeper, right? That play is what sparks that curiosity, right? We inquire a lot more, when we get, like a little bit more into it.
It's probably a good idea, a good time to ask you about, your background. Cause I don't actually know, like, we've met many times, but I don't know, how did you get into movement, exercise? Did you play footy when you were at school? I believe you went to boarding school. I remember you telling me that. Like, and then how did you get through to where you are today? Like, kind of a bit of a background.
Yeah, I guess I was exposed to a lot of sports at boarding school. But obviously after having left boarding school, like many, late teenagers, or I was just driven by my primal instincts to just get swole, attract the ladies and, basically pack the muscle on. So it was basically any shape of whatever looked like resistance training, so that was basically, the start of everything, I guess.
What's changed? Nothing's changed, man.
That's it. All I'm saying right now is like, I've still got the same thing, but I'm just trying to be a little more sophisticated in how I get swole.
Very nice. Oh, that's cool. So then, okay, so did you continue playing sports after school?
I had the opportunity to, but no, I didn't. Long story short, essentially kind of, I was born and raised in Kathmandu in Nepal, and then I got shipped to, boarding school in the UK. So I never really had this opportunity to kind of live with my parents who lived in Dubai. So after I finished school, I was like, hey, I want to be like a normal child. I want to spend some time with my parents. So I decided to kind of go and live with them in Dubai. And within a year, I was like, I don't want to be normal.
Yeah.
So then I kind of came back to UK and, kind of did, a few things. And then eventually kind of, started training again. I had a friend who used to take me to the gym. And I was like, hey, I want to go a little bit deeper into this. I'm interested about this. So I think at the age of 20, I enrolled at a like a training academy in London. And I basically kind of, I borrowed some money from my parents, the only time I borrowed money, and then packed up, kind of, and started studying in London. And, I was lucky to get mentored pretty early on, straight after, PT school or whatever you want to call it. And then I've never looked back.
Very cool. And how long ago did you arrive on the shores of Australia?
I believe. Oh, that's a good question. I believe it was 2000. I want to say 15, middle of 2015, I think. Yeah, so good. 5-6 years ago now.
Yeah, cool. No, I didn't know all of that history of yours, but a lot of moving around, and you found your place here in Sydney, and you're here with a young family.
That's right. So obviously, Sarah, my partner, my life partner, my business partner, my partner in everything. She's Australian, so obviously, it was our time to come back here. And I didn't have any problems since I'm so used to moving around. And the sole purpose of moving back here was to, put some roots down and start a family. And that's exactly what we've done. We've got a beautiful 3-year-old daughter named Kaya, and we have AIM, and we have our tribe.
That's cool. Kaya's a cutie, by the way. So did you always live in the North Shore? And when did you start PTing in gyms around there? And what type of training were you doing in those early years in Australia? Because, I know you, and if the listeners haven't seen you before, I mean, you're jacked, you're swole, and you've got some serious body weight skills, and you push some serious numbers with the weights. Like, how did that kind of little evolution happen once you established, I'm here in Australia, I'm going to put down roots. And then how did your training evolve to what it is today?
Cool. So, I mean, basically kind of when I landed in Australia, obviously I didn't have a job or anywhere to call home. In terms of training, I'm obviously working. I was pretty lucky to have a few referrals from back in London, a few clients. There were also the reasons I also moved to North Shore. So, the only other place I've always lived in North Shore since I've been in Australia. Right now, I'm in Willoughby, but before that, I was in Mossman. And for those people who don't know Mossman, it is basically a retirement village.
Pronounced Mosman.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I did not know that's how you pronounce it. But there you go. Basically this retirement village.
You said it right. I always hang shit on Mossman.
So this retirement village, kind of where I had, a few clients, obviously, who are well off and, who were willing to kind of train one-on-one with me, and based on, referrals they had. And, these people are obviously well-to-do, and these people's intentions weren't to get jacked and swole, just to kind of move better and whatnot. So basically I was really lucky to have a couple of one-on-one clients, and I serviced them in parks. I worked under the Harbour Bridge. Balmoral was, my office for probably 3-4 years, so Balmoral is a beach for anybody who doesn't know. So basically it was outdoors, and it was effectively just all one-on-one. And in that time, I was also pretty lucky when I first got here, again, through referral. Somebody, a business or outdoor, group training business effectively, they were looking for somebody to come and coach for them or train people. And, I met the guy, and, I was like, cool, I'm happy to help out a couple of times a week. So that was really my first exposure to group training as well. And, from what I'd heard and seen very briefly back in UK, group training had never been my jam because I'd always done one-on-one. So, I didn't know how a typical group class went. The only thing that I knew was like, okay, shit, that's something that you shouldn't be doing, So I was starting to kind of put this thing, kind of in my head where, hang on, I'm not going to be doing all this wild stuff together because these people aren't prepared to do these wild stuff, and that's, I guess, kind of when I started to get exposed and to, group training. And when I started to kind of, I guess, start to get ideas and the opportunities to carve my own path in terms of basically going, okay, well, what do I want the group training to be? Kind of how can I, do things my way that is going to allow for us all to, essentially excel in our own way. So that was the kind of the backstory of me arriving in Australia. Everything was outdoors. I've only been in the physical space for, basically 3 years now, but obviously a year didn't happen. So 2 years, but 3 to 4 years was all outdoors.
With the training you were doing back in the UK, what was, like you said before when I was having the tech issues, it was about getting jacked and that kind of thing, standard kind of young man shit. But what was is that where you started your barbell strength training? Was that a big focus then, or was it body weight stuff?
Nah, so it was, like most, kind of, well, I'm not just gonna say like most coaches, like, like anybody starting in this realm, there is so much options, right? And I don't know about you boys, but I get distracted very, very easily, kind of, and I like the big, shiny objects very, very soon. So, very early on, my own training looked very, very different in the sense that, I was attracted by, barbell training. I want to excel at that. Then I'd see somebody else, first time do ring training or muscle up, and I'd be like, well, how do you do that? Kind of, I had a few friends who were into triathlons and endurance training, so I was like, well, I need to kind of dabble in this as well, kind of, and so there was just a bit of everything, kind of, and as you guys know, when you stretch yourself in every direction, you never really excel at anything either, kind of, it was just more about a dabbling kind of thing. And I guess, having a little bit of a knowledge in terms of, kind of, physiology and that sort of stuff, and having just a small base of strength allowed me to kind of, be able to dabble in multiple different things. But it was exactly that. It was just dabbling, kind of from things like, even jiu-jitsu for that matter. Someone introduced me to jiu-jitsu, kind of, and I went by myself. I was the only one in the class, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? This guy's teaching me how to shrimp, and all this kind of thing. I'm coming back home, and Sarah's like, what did he do? Kind of, I'm trying to explain it.
I hugged this guy for 90 minutes and we sweat all over each other. And
I went to sleep, and I'm not sure what he did to me.
I submit to him.
I know, and I guess kind of those pretty early on years were an opportunity for me, if you like, by accident, definitely not by design, but by accident, being able to dabble in multiple different things. And what that allowed me to do was kind of just start to kind of see things through a different lens. I mean, this was only personally as well, right? And as I said before, I was, my main service was one-on-one, and the people that I was working with weren't interested in this thing, or, this wasn't their way, So I had to somehow distill this thing I was experiencing, kind of, and trying to go a little bit deep into, then trying to figure out a way to apply and implement it, for them, Auntie Dory, doesn't want to lift, 100-kilo deadlifts, right? But, kind of, how can we get her to understand this concept of being able to hinge well, right? And being able to, kind of challenge her in that way and stuff. So that's when I started to kind of piece things together, kind of, and the fact that, I was able to dabble in multiple different things kind of allowed me to start to see things slightly differently.
That's a very interesting point you raise. I think, it maybe also to a trap for a lot of ambitious young coaches, whereby you're so into it that you're training multiple times a day, often, 5, 6, 7 days a week. And so you get a client, like you just mentioned, someone rolls in, they look at what you're doing. They think, oh, I'd like to do some of that. And then you start dishing shit out to them like they're training just as much as you are. And it's only, I think, with some time, isn't it, that you can recalibrate and go, oh no, hang on. She can train 3 days a week for 1 hour each time, which is different to me. So I can thematically, I can have her do the same stuff, but I have to sort of choose differently and be a bit more deliberate about what we work on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that was one of the biggest breakthrough, I think, as a coach for me personally, I would go far as kind of, with time, as you boys will know, you'll start to kind of see these, underlying things, so even, 5 different people with the same intention, same goals, whatever you want to call it kind of thing, we can potentially go 5 different ways. In fact, we probably have to go 5 different ways, but it's the ability to be able to then articulate that, to be able to communicate that and get that buy-in, right? You have people with different personalities and whatnot kind of thing, right? We have the go-getters, and we have the guys who are like us, who get distracted very easily and get bored very easily. How do we retain their attention enough to educate them and to kind of, enroll them in this process, as opposed to, those people who are just like, go hard or go home. It's like, whoa, it's okay. Like we can back off a little bit here. No gains will be lost, that sort of thing. And just being able to do this, kind of across the board, that's where the real art is, right? And that comes with time, kind of, and through making mistakes, right? Obviously you want to make sure those mistakes are not very costly.
So, do you still consider yourself the dabbler, or how do you see that now? I feel like because I see all your stuff every week and I love it, and it looks very much like you know who you are now, and you've got like certain lanes, and you seem to service all those lanes of movements pretty well. You've got a spread. Like, are you still the dabbler, and how do you organize yourself?
Yeah, cool. So this is something I kind of try tell like all, the coaches and team and stuff like that. The way I have evolved over time is like basically stop looking at things like a strict discipline or whatever kind of stuff. Of course they are, but I'm more interested in being able to take the underlying principles and playing with that, and most importantly, being able to see if I can transfer those things across different modalities, if you like. Joey, jiu-jitsu, right? It's like, your body awareness, kind of like, and, things like that, that's the skill component, right? And then, we have the physical attributes, kind of most people, get broken on the mats all the time, that they aren't in a position to apply the skills they're being taught, right? Kind of, let's say handstands, for example, right? It's like, I don't know about your journey, but, mine was basically like, everybody telling me I had super tight shoulders, super restricted. So I had to focus on flexibility first and build up and XYZ kind of thing. Same thing with strength training or body weight training and all these different types of training. So I'm more interested in, I guess, kind of finding, well, what's the most common thing, kind of with all this stuff, and what is effectively the language that, kind of we tend to use around here is like, what's the underlying foundation, foundation comes before fundamentals. We all know and talk about the fundamentals, right? The fundamental patterns and all this kind of stuff. But the problem is most people can't do the fundamentals, right? Hey, we got to push, pull, squat, hinge, and all this type of stuff, which is essential. That's why it's fundamental. It's super important. They're non-negotiable. But if it's causing you more grief and you're not able to grow within those things, you have to look at things at a deeper level. And effectively, this is why, I'm more interested in kind of going, okay, well, what's the underlying principles, kind of, so how to spell that a little bit further, effectively, okay, well, how do I need to breathe in jiu-jitsu when I'm absolutely being dominated, right? Versus how am I going to focus on my breathing when I'm upside down? Or how am I going to breathe when I've got 150 kilos on my back? Or, things like that. So like the breathing is the underlying thing. We talked about hinging as a minute ago with Anti-Dori, right? Effectively, like, my awareness of, being able to control and obviously being mindful of my hip and spine integrity, at what degree and like how much can I cope and things like that. That's going to allow me to do certain things in different modalities. So I'm more interested in doing those kind of stuff and then being able to obviously then have fun, right? Then it's like infinite opportunities, right? So a lot of people think, I train, I don't know, fucking hours and hours in the day. I only do, kind of maybe 2 or 3 really big strength sessions a week, kind of, and it also depends on what projects do I have on at the time, kind of, and I call them projects because, it's never really I've arrived, kind of, it's more so kind of like, okay, how do I refine this? How do I make this shit look good? Kind of like, that's my thinking. I've been squatting for over a decade, right? And I'm still passionate about squatting now because I'm like, well, my squatting has evolved over that time, and that evolution didn't happen by accident. It's like, well, how do I refine it? How do I make it better and whatnot? I know I'm not going to be lifting a ton, kind of I don't want to go to a powerlifting competition, whatever kind of stuff, but I'm still interested in kind of knowing as much as I can, because then I can take that learning and then apply it, not just to myself, but also then, other people that I choose to serve and lead. So that's the kind of thinking, if you like, so I'm more interested in kind of the underlying stuff and being able to experiment those. So in that way, it will seem like I'm a dabbler, body weight, strength training, whatever, body weight training and, external loading, whatever you want to call it kind of stuff. But it's with intention. I hope
Yeah.
that kind of answers the question.
Yeah, I get where you're going with it. I wanted to know is with the classes that you have and with the squads. I mean, you mentioned the squads are a bit more personalized, but with the classes that are supplements, do you organize? How do you organize a class? Like, what class do you have? Are you doing?
Beautiful.
Does that feature principles? Like, oh, this one's body weight, push, pull. This one, like, yeah. How does?
So the label that we put on our classes is pretty straightforward. We have a get bent session, which is effectively get bent, right? So it's basically flexibility focus kind of thing, right? And then we have lift sessions.
Cones.
Then we have
yeah.
And then we have, lift session, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's like, kind of lift shit, kind of, and then we have strength and movement sessions, which is effectively the upper body work, kind of work that's dedicated for upper body. And in between, we have a few other sessions we label foundation, and then sometimes we have skill sessions and stuff like that. But effectively, those, three main sessions. And the way we program it is effectively, again, same mentality, same way like I like to kind of, train, which is we work on a project. So let's say programming could be a 12-week long and it could be focused on certain things. So let's say in strength and movement, it could be, hey guys, we're looking to develop, one-arm chins and handstand push-ups, for lack of a better word, right? And obviously, no one here is working on those two things directly. However, that's the end in mind. Where are you on that journey? Oh, you haven't got a chin? That's cool. Guess what? Let's start there for you. And that's what the class will entail for them. So the right progression for the right person, the right context, essentially. Obviously, that then allows us to then, excel people or meet people at where they're at a lot better. So, the way we structure sessions is effectively, we warm up as a team, kind of, we have the intent laid down. And then as the session goes through, everybody sort of kind of understands their own personal context. And they're guided a lot, simpler, kind of in order to kind of do and push to their context, essentially. So yeah, that's how we structure the classes. And of course, that's a lot simple to do coming on back of things like the squad and the one-on-ones, because, we know them personally. They know their limitations and their intentions and where they're going to be pushing or pulling back and stuff like that. So it makes kind of directing people a lot simpler, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So it's the same philosophy that you've got with yourself kind of transfers into the classes. So the way that you've trained and you've learnt has transferred into how you've built your business and how you kind of plan the training around there.
Yeah, perfect. So, three things we kind of like, and this is again going to the coaches and the team kind of thing. The big goal, the end in mind is to be able to lead ourselves powerfully, and, others we choose to love and, obviously serve. But the first step in that is basically being able to, walk the walk, right? So effectively, everything that I've done, kind of through my own experience, through my knowledge, and that's why it's a continuous journey, right? Because the second part to that is from your knowledge, from your experience, you're going to be able to carve your path a lot better. And that's what effectively, AIM is, it's that carving our own path. It's just the same way you boys have designed, kind of JBs, right? It's on the values and the ethos that you obviously, you uphold even when you're not there, kind of like, and it's also something that, other people can come and contribute to as well. Because effectively, as I said, the end goal is to be able to lead ourselves powerfully. And for us, the way we've designed this, kind of the way I aim with the squad and the training that we do, is effectively, okay, everybody needs to focus on themselves to personally and physically develop themselves. But then there's also this amazing thing that comes from this community, this tribe, right? This kind of collective piece. So can we give them a bit of both? Can we make some time and space where they can focus on themselves? And then can we also give them some time to then, come together and contribute to each other's growth? Because that's something that I never had, kind of.
Can you tell me, one of the things I think about when I look at your training, and, this is all through social media, is you've often, and I don't know if you do it a lot now, but you used to superset a lot of mobility and heavy strength work. And I remember vividly you doing a really heavy deadlift for reps and then going and doing your back bridge. And I think that is so cool. Like that combination of movements in the one workout really speaks to the whole sort of ethos of, what you and us what we value in training, right? Where it's like the ability to do everything, and it's not like you're trying your best not to be linear about it. Can you talk a little bit on that sort of less conventional approach to developing strength and mobility?
Okay. I mean, there are different ways we can go about it. I mean, the most simplest way, I'll just speak about it as if, kind of I talk about this with everybody who walks through the doors of AIM, no matter what their experience and stuff is. The first thing in anything is being aware, kind of, and in this case, if we put strength as the end goal, the conventional way is effectively just training, right? There's plenty of literature out there. There's plenty of programs out there that will get us, swole, jacked, or whatever, if you follow from A to B to C and things like that. What it doesn't count for is obviously, kind of, who that individual is, their life context, their learning abilities, kind of, you boys have young families. I'm not sure if you guys train as much, kind of since I've had Kaya, I haven't been doing jiu-jitsu, kind of like, or being able to train the way I was doing. So everything has had to evolve. So the thinking behind, kind of training for me is effectively, well, what's the end in mind? And, what's the best way that I'm going to hit multiple different, modalities, right? When I say modalities, multiple different goals that I have. So as I say, strong, bendy, and skillful, right? Or, strong, supple, and savage, right? Whatever you want to call it. Effectively, kind of, if that's the goal, then, whatever I'm going to do has to complement, kind of, one of those things at least. So when I go into a session, that's what I have in mind, kind of like, am I moving towards the project or the goal that I have? Kind of, is this going to make me stronger? If so, in what way? Can I transfer this to anywhere else? And obviously, there are sessions where I want to see, can I marry the both together, the suppleness and the, kind of strength together? So, again, what we see in social media is not always true. Surprise, surprise, kind of in terms of the way I train myself, the intensity, the things that I put together for myself is not how I would train or coach somebody else, because their context is completely different. The underlying principle is the same thing. Yes, we still want to be supple. We still want to dedicate time to get stronger. We still want to, so for me, for myself personally, kind of, we can use the word unconventional kind of thing. There are, 1,000 different ways to skin a cat, kind of. So to me, I want to be hitting full body, kind of pretty much every session that I go into. So whether it's an upper body strength session, I will do something for my lower body. It just doesn't look like a barbell or resistance kind of thing. I will do, as we talked about, flexibility, mobility, whatever you want to call it, or even kind of locomotion type of work, if I'm doing upper body work, if I'm doing lower body strength work, then I'm very clear on, okay, well, what stress, kind of I'm going to be putting, what's the intent behind this, and, how much bandwidth do I have to then, go do something else. And that sort of dictates the flow, kind of how I structure things. And again, that's an evolution, kind of.
Yeah, mate, I like it. And it's, it's tough, hey, when you're like into a lot of different things. I'm similar, and it's always been a thing for a gym like yours and ours, where we subscribe to, body work, like not one narrow practice of training. It's body weight training, it's mobility, it's a little bit of fighting stuff, and there's lifting and stuff like that, skill bits. So it's difficult to organize. And I don't know, there's definitely, as you said, there's not one solution. You have to meet the individuals where they're at. And often we're changing it depending on how our tribe evolves and what we think that they need more of this year. So yeah, it's a difficult thing. Your kind of freestyle freedom expression sessions are famous.
The tantrum sessions.
Ones where you obviously got the gym on your own, or maybe there's 20 people around off camera, but it's like a bit of Drake or some big trap beat, and then you sort of dance, locomotion, chin up, like all in one. Do you have space for that in the classes or
what? That's strictly forbidden. No.
Only when no one's looking.
So, they're basically like my more like a down reg session kind of thing, I guess, as you said, they're more, I call them tantrum sessions. So effectively what I actually do is, make sure that no one is in the space. I lock the doors, and then, whatever I'm vibing to at the time, that week, that sort of kind of music, that genre, then that will go on blast, full blast. And then basically I'll try to come up with shit, that I've been inspired, I've seen somebody else do, or work on things that, I'm curious about. But that little space, that way of, you call it like freedom of expression, whatever, it's a really important part, of my training, practice, whatever you want to call it. And the reason for that is because, Joey, to answer your question from earlier on, like, it is unconventional. Like, I'm not thinking about being technical and da-da-da. I'm not thinking about reps and sets, the normal kind of way, the normal jargon, This is more so like, going on the field, being a little more intuitive kind of stuff. And I guess this is that skill component, this is that becoming the savage component that I see myself, kind of being drawn to, and also, wanting to coach other people into. What I mean by that is, attributes such as strength, flexibility, power, all this kind of stuff, right? It's pretty straightforward. We know we can put the stress on the body, kind of give the stimulus. People can go and create the right environments, and they will kind of basically thrive, right? However, putting all those attributes together, being able to use it in different scenarios, different contexts, kind of in different ways, I mean, that's, kind of what people don't have the opportunity to do so. This is why, we are so heavily focused in this concept of play, just like you guys are, kind of, we use play with so many different intents. We do it at the start of the session, first thing in the morning, or last thing in the evening. It changes people's state, right? They fucking forget they've just woken up, or what they've had to do all day, or whatever. They get to see what's in front of them. There is no like right or wrong. There's like, no slow thinking, there's just reaction, kind of, and eventually over time it becomes a more of a responsive thing, right? You move and you gel in a completely different way. Obviously that's more of an unstructured work, right? The reality is, unstructured work is not going to complement the structured work, right? Or people at least will not see it that way. No one fucking 1RM'd their back squat juggling, right? Kind of like, things like that, right? However, like there's this different entity, kind of where we continue to kind of work towards being able to express ourselves, better, be aware of ourselves in and through space. That notion, that little skill, that attribute in itself can be translated into anything. Like we talked about having that strong base, and this is effectively what, we do as coaches, as businesses, we arm, people with the ability, with the strength, with being able to bend this way and things like that. But to coach them and, teach them to have this ownership of themselves, kind of this awareness and this ownership of them being able to do, and use their stuff, that doesn't happen overnight. And that's the unconventional side of things, right? So you have to figure a way out where it becomes like the norm, right? Kind of, I don't see anybody else playing, kind of like, there aren't many other gyms, apart from like yours and ours, and things like that, where, playing and, touching each other, kind of like it's a big no-no in everywhere else, right? Kind of, and to me, that's like, it's just fucking crazy. There's so much opportunity in terms of, individuals contributing, right? Kind of, and also, actually learning, and we call it the soft skills, right? But things like, if somebody's a savage, kind of at a handball, right? And they're playing with fucking Auntie Dory again, bless her, right? Who can't move as much. She's probably hasn't got hand-eye coordination. Like, Savage Joe is not going to be smacking it through, right? It's going to have to come down to her level to create opportunities for her to be engaging and stuff like that. And, that's like, I know it's not training, but that's the unconventional side of things of like how we develop as humans, right? It's like a little bit of empathy, I guess, right? Kind of, and, and understanding that and taking that into our training, like, okay, I'm training hard and X, Y, Z, but it's okay, kind of, if I have to back off a little bit, or the other way around, kind of, hey, Auntie Dory, it's okay to push yourself a little bit, So these are the little emotions or whatever kind of thing, this awareness, kind of, this ownership, that, kind of, these tantrum sessions kind of give me personally. And then that obviously then trickles down to, how I coach and things like that as well, right? it was a big deal for me to kind of, put myself, moving weirdly, as you say, like dancing or whatever kind of stuff, doing weird shit, right? But once it's out there, right? And then you're like, okay, I'm going to own this shit.
Well, the clubs are closed, so you need to have those sessions, you know what I mean? I don't know if Savage Joe would give Auntie Doria a break. He'd just rain bombs on her.
No, if you can't stand the heat, get the fuck out. That free pass is where I'm coming from, lady.
Oh, that's hilarious.
What was I gonna ask you? Oh yeah. So with these kind of more macro level views, right? Like what you're talking about, intention and context, and looking at the underlying themes within a different practices and sort of seeing it for that. These are obviously large scale concepts that I would say only really come to you when you've been in this game for a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all went through that same thing where it's like you first get into training and you just want to get bigger pecs. And then slowly over time, you go from just wanting to grow bigger muscles to expanding your awareness and understanding to go wherever you want, right? But you slowly kind of, I guess it's like your perspective widens. My question for you is how heavy are you on people when they come into your space? Because as we know, when someone comes in, you have to meet them where they're at. You got to talk to them at that level. So how heavy are you on those macro concepts? Do you bring people in and kind of go towards those macro concepts down the track? Or do you just go, fuck it, I'm going to drop this bomb on you right now and it's like sink or swim?
Cool. That's a really good question. I guess kind of, again, through trial and error and obviously through a little bit of experience now, we've kind of formulated that, effectively we have 4 underlying principles that we effectively teach, everybody who walks through the AIM, doors of AIM. And the beautiful thing about this principle is that, we can step sideways if it doesn't quite gel with the individual, right? But if people get it, then it's pretty simple to then expedite the journey. Right. And these 4, kind of simple principles that we share, as part of what we consider our foundation program is pretty straightforward. We talked about the hip and spine integrity. So somebody's ability to hinge at the hips, right? We want to work towards being able to hinge at the hips because it's going to have a huge impact, not just in the 4 walls of the gym, but also outside their lives, right? Of course, we don't teach them to deadlift, kind of in the first whatever kind of stuff, but being able to hinge and, we can do that multiple different ways. Being able to breathe, kind of a lot of people don't understand how to breathe. And obviously in the context of gym environments, we're more interested in kind of the bracing side of things, right? So again, if the underlying principle is teach somebody how to breathe and they have, okay mechanics, then we can go straight into teaching them the concept of how to brace, without loading them up. Choosing movements that is going to challenge the coordination, their awareness, and also the ability, right? Then we have the shoulder stability, as you boys know, for upper body strength. Being able to be strong in wide ranges of motion from the shoulders is super important. But how we stabilize the shoulders is also kind of, slightly different in each positions, right? So we get to, explore that avenue, things like the hanging variations, plank variations, all this kind of stuff. It's pretty straightforward. But if someone doesn't quite get it, then it's also easy to regress things, right? Then the 4th and last one is, single leg work. So of course, we can, as I mentioned before, the fundamental patterns like the hinge and squat. A lot of people, I love squatting, as you probably could tell, but we don't teach people how to squat, meaning like back squat, at AIM very often, kind of for probably 90% of the tribe, like we don't go to the back squat, kind of anytime within the first 6 to 8 months, right? We're more interested in developing, single leg work. Can you actually stand on one leg? All right. Can you start to control a little bit of a hinging motion in that single leg? Okay. More of a knee dominant, and then start to kind of, effectively we say, can they, and all of these, 4 underlying principles, we tie them into 3 neat categories, which is like, pattern, which is their awareness. Can you execute this movement with, being able to breathe and also hinging and balancing one leg, right? It's like the underlying principle, and then you have the stability, right? It's like, can you actually control this? If we gave you something else, can you not let that muck you up a little bit, right? Can you actually resist this? Because the 3rd and last, right? Strength. That's the easy part. It's like, do more than you did last week, go harder, like do more reps, do more sets. That's the fucking easy part. But if you're not, aware or in control, you got no fucking business trying to fucking, outdo the weight or whatever it is, right? So that's the kind of general path that we like to take everybody in. And the sweet thing, as I said, is like, we can take both, Savage Joe or Auntie Dory through both same process, but it will look and it can be molded into what they need and want. Right. And so that gives us the ability to, learn more about the individual in terms of how is it they learn, what is their physical context, and how intelligent are they in terms of, can they coordinate their body, right? But most importantly, now we're starting to speak the same language, right? We also kind of give this, this time and space allows them to kind of see how is it that AIM actually works. Because there are other moving parts like the tribe sessions, right? We talked about, hey, we play, we touch each other, this is not a, hey, set timer, go sort of thing. It's like, you got to talk to somebody, you're probably going to be responsible for another human being, and guess what? That another human being is probably going to give you feedback. Can you take the feedback? Can you give feedback? All this elements kind of thing. So within this kind of, first 4 to 6 weeks, we sort of kind of know whether AIM is their thing or AIM is not their thing, and it's cool if it isn't, most people kind of find that, oh shit, this is completely different. It's not just simple training. So this allows us to, Joe, and to answer your question, allows us to take that macro view and, take the most important bits and start to instill it right from the start. Because of course, over time, we want to refine and push and challenge and be able to take sideways and all this kind of stuff.
Talk to me on the idea of training for aesthetics and looking good, right? We talked about it, it's obviously at the heart of the beginning of the training journey. And then as you get further into it, perspectives widen. However, it's kind of always a part, right?
Fuck yeah.
How do you view that? Because I guess I should preface this question with, we come from, we've had a large amount of exposure to the movement culture, and the movement culture is like a whole bunch of people that look really good, but never talk about it, right? Bouncing tennis balls and they're doing amazing things, right? But it's I say that with a large hint of irony, because I think that like the aesthetic part is never addressed or recognized in the movement culture, even though it's so obviously a part of it. And at our gym, it's obviously a big thing. We got Swole Fridays where it's like a bodybuilding session, and we got no problem with saying like your body should totally represent all of the hard work that it does week in and week out.
Sure.
What's your view on that?
Well, I think I'll start by saying kind of, everybody is lying if they say they don't want to look good naked, right? I mean, as I said, it's the primal thing that still drives me, right? I'm not getting the honeys anymore. I never did, right? But I want to do everything that I can to look good, right? And obviously my training is going to be a reflection of that. Now, when we strip things back, right, let's kind of look at it from two different views, the traditional way, right? Kind of the science-based approach, right? It's like, you got to eat rat and you got to train rat, and you're going to do, this rep range and this, all this kind of stuff. And clearly that shit works, right? There are a lot of people who look ridiculously good, but we also know those people probably don't move as well as they want to, right? And more importantly, they're probably not prepared, or setting themselves up for the future, right? Being stiff, tight, probably in the name of looking good, the body's not feeling so good. I don't know. I could be, generalizing here. Then obviously we have the other spectrum, as you said, the movement scene, if you like. And I don't know about you, Joe, but I've never really been immersed into the movement culture, quote unquote, that kind of thing. But from what I've heard, you got to train certain hours a day, multiple times a week, all this kind of stuff, right? And you got to be in the practice. And if you want to take things to the next level, probably grow a man bun, and like all this kind of stuff, right? All jokes aside, I mean, they're physically moving so much, right? And as a byproduct, they will obviously not only be moving well, they look good too, right? Now, those are the two things. Now, when we look at the people that we choose to serve, they fit neither of those things, right? They don't have 5-6 hours a day to train on a daily basis, right? They can't sustain it. In fact, it's not even in the equation, right? And then they're not interested in this, kind of like, I'm going to train and diet, count macros, all this kind of stuff, right? And of course, I'm not saying either of those things are wrong. Each their own. There are people who are willing to, if they're serious about it, they will kind of do that. the way I view it is, kind of, okay, what is the best way to hit, two of those things? How can we get people moving and give their body the right stress and, kind of the stimulus for them to be able to, effectively be leaner, right? Kind of, and obviously that means coming back to the project thinking, lift, for instance, there's like lift for strength and there's lift for swole, kind of, and hey, we can consolidate those things, kind of, and put a project there. Then obviously there's this continuous, okay, are we actually moving well, kind of, and looking at a different spectrum essentially. So that's how kind of, I manage things personally for myself as well as, the AIM tribe effectively. So we look at the both realm essentially, but it's really important, Paul, as you were saying, it feels we're being stretched, or we're drawn to so many different things. So sometimes it feels hard, but when you come down to think about it, it's not really when you know these underlying things, right? So looking good naked is definitely one of the priorities. So, like throughout our programming, throughout the work that we're, undertaking or doing or implementing, there needs to be that stress coming in, but in the right way, in the right dosages. That also then needs to complement, right, the other stuff that we want to do, which is this, the movement side of things. So what I mean by that is, to give you an example, we can have our last block before we went to COVID was, our whole 16 week was designed around lifting, right? And, the sole intent of that 16 week was to be strong, kind of get stronger. So obviously we have testing at the start, then testing at the end, right? But, 8 weeks of that was more kind of around, okay, we're going to refine technique, so patterning, and then we're going to build volume, so prepare our bodies. Then the final 8 weeks, then we can start to put the numbers in, and obviously, depending on the individuals, we can get stronger, right? Results, surprise, surprise, 16 weeks of consistency. You went from this to this, great stuff. Now, in the same boat, it does not make sense in strength and movement session to be doing, hey, we're going to be also working on one-arm chins and handstand push-ups. And guess what? We're going to be putting that head to toe, that sort of thing. Like there is so many competing demands coming in. Okay, we're very, very clear. Strength is the priority. Right? So all the other work that we're going to do is going to be done in a way that complements that strength, not takes away. That means, okay, let's get back to doing the basics in the strength movement sessions. Let's go back to breaking techniques down. Let's lay the foundation down. Let's do those things we never really had the opportunity when we're pushing the, our capacity, right? Then what happens then is we flip things, right? So now strength and movement becomes the priority for 16 weeks or whatever it is. And the lift is more of a consolidation. Right? When I say consolidation, it's like, as you guys know, you started here, you put the work in, you go up there, and people go, I've arrived, and then they just don't do fucking everything. Or the other side, they think, okay, now I'm here. This is my new base. I can go straight to the new place. That is a sure recipe for breaking down. So we call it like consolidation. We want to make this new normal, right? In order to do that, it doesn't mean go harder, right? Well, we need to understand what, kind of how can we best maintain this? How can we sustain it? Now, as we do that, as we kind of create some time and space to do that, like we can then look at other attributes that we can look to develop or kind of dive into a little bit. So to answer your question, effectively that, the aesthetic side of things, we effectively, if you look at a macro level, it's almost like split training. It's like lower body for 16 weeks, upper body for 16 weeks. I mean, we're also doing other work in between, but things that are complementing, right? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It does. And I find it a refreshing perspective because I think I've very much got into the movement thing for a while there. And I probably took that opinion of like, aesthetics is not important. Like I just drank the Kool-Aid. And then now as I've sort of really kind of settled on my own views and stuff around training and physical development, I'm like, no, that shit's just so important, and you keep throwing out this word context. It's like for some people, like what they might need at a given time is just to put on a bit more muscle, lose a bit of body fat. And that's great. That's a really good result for you, right now. Or for some people, it might be, hey, let's develop some coordination or some flexibility. But it's like having the ability to take your words to kind of step sideways and go, oh, you know what? I think this is the thing for you right now. And it's all evolving, right? For each individual.
Yeah. What we found really helpful there, Joe, just to kind of expand on that a little bit, kind of is, we called it like testing, right? I don't like the word testing, but like, benchmarks or collecting information, like, every 16 weeks, there is basically, 4 things effectively we can, benchmark on things on, right? There's like your flexibility, then there's your strength, kind of, and there's your, DEXA scan, right? There's your body composition. right? Those three things are those three key areas. So it's your strength, your flexibility, and your body composition. Effectively, like that's the forefront of, what we kind of try, advocate, right? The fourth and last one is fitness. And let's be frank, like we're not fitness to typical, fitness realm kind of thing, right? We're not doing WODs and like, we're not looking to cardiovascularly develop people. I'm not saying that's not important, right? Kind of with all the other things that we kind of tend to do, that just doesn't happen to be our thing, kind of. So we are more interested in, okay, can we get strong? Can we get bendy? And then, like, how do we look? We collect information 4 times a year, like numbers don't lie. What's your body composition? And again, it's not that we're married to those numbers, but it's just to collect information to see, hey, when you were lifting and lifting super heavy, like probably that's going to have a different impact in your, kind of morphology than, when you're just working on the upper body strength, right? And it's okay. For that reason, it may say different numbers. But then that's, again, given the ownership, given the education, that sort of stuff, then again, people can, we can better help people, right? So again, that looking good naked is a huge thing. It's a really, really important thing. Another thing that I just wanted to say was, we talked about the different levels, kind of the aesthetics, the science-based approach, and then there's the movement side of things. One of the underlying things in both of these, kind of is obviously, what they eat, right? And also how much they move. And then when we bring it back to this middle ground, our day-to-day people that, we love and obviously kind of, serve, like how's it we can get them to move a little bit more, right? Not just when they're in the session. So like, how do we create those opportunities? Now, as I said, we're not into, hey, go run 5 miles or, go row or go do this short burst of high intensity, those kind of labels or whatever kind of stuff. Like, sure, we create, environment that's happening in the background, but really like, we talked about this play thing, right? So it's like, how do we get the heart rate up a little bit? How do we kind of like get this, this other attribute that we don't kind of readily talk about and stuff like that. That's also happening at the time. As an example, kind of we highly advocate that people kind of, go do long, slow, steady type of walks, kind of multiple times a week. It's still aerobic work, right? And effectively,
How dare you?
I know, that's why I whispered it. And I even did this secret hand gesture.
It's cardio. Yeah.
That's it. It's a little bit like the salad, right? Like, I don't want to be friends with salad, but god damn, micronutrients, I need them,
Well, I mean, for anyone who's listening who maybe doesn't understand the relationship, there's a huge amount of cardiovascular benefit to strength training, right? And play. It's like play a game of knee taps or play some handball. Like that you can't get strong without developing your cardiovascular health at the same time. However,
Correct.
You can develop your cardiovascular health and still be a fucking weakling forever.
Correct. And,
so you like choose one that's kind of higher order. Yeah.
Correct. And again, I don't want to, say that cardiovascular fitness is not important. And I'll go as far as saying, and I want to just, of course, we're creating, the stimulus of that aerobic, if you like, right? By doing strength training and things like that. However, the stimulus that comes from doing aerobic work, there is second to none. Like that is the best way, right? This is why we still advocate, kind of walking and things like that, right? And as you said it there, like having a good aerobic base, guess what? It's going to help you recover a lot better. You can, you need less rest. Your body's going to heal and, essentially adapt a lot quicker, a lot better kind of thing. But again, if you go too hard, kind of, it's like, it's another competing demand. Like, are you doing cardiovascular or strength now? So again, this is why you have to make the right choices and things like that. From a programming perspective, then this becomes like, okay, what time of the year, what's happening to the rest of the program? And that's where we get to kind of, bring different elements in. But yeah, long story short, kind of, we obviously advocate more the strength route to create the aerobic, or anaerobic stimulus, if you like, as opposed to the traditional, kind of, let's go, all right, 20 minutes, go run, kind of thing.
Hey, I wanted to ask you, Vic, who are like, just basically your influences, like, and the people that you look toward to draw inspiration from, and also maybe the people that you've learned from in the past. Who are those? Two or three or whatever it is. Really well.
It's really, really hard because I'm inspired by pretty much everything. around me, like in anything. And, big shout outs to you, Joey and Paul. And I remember, Paul, you weren't there at the time because I think you were still working, in your real job, but when I first came into the first JB outpost, I think it was your baby outpost, by the comparison of how you've scaled and stuff like that, I was still working outdoors, like all I knew was just outdoor. And one of the sole purpose of me coming there was I was, I wanted to know how you guys did it, and I wanted to see how could you, effectively, you were carving your own path as you continue to do so now as well. So I was drawn and inspired by yourselves, right? Your ability to create community, this attribute that I'd never kind of really belonged to, in most of my, PTing days, right? Because I was sold one-on-one, right? But the sheer power, and the amazing thing that comes out of a community, right? The tribe, like, again, that doesn't happen by accident. You know what I mean? And so I was drawn to that. So you guys were a huge inspiration, as far as let's say, coaching and things like that. Again, same thing, there are the greats before, us, our time, that I still continue to read on and things like that, right? The Poliquins or whatever. There's the Muck Daddy, obviously, Patel, even, Paul Check, all this kind of stuff, right? Who are the greats, right? The great minds, essentially, who, in their own way.
Check's a good one. He doesn't get a lot of mention these days, but he's an incredible thinker.
Effectively, the way, this is just before, I guess I say before my time, but, because I've only been in the game for about a decade, or just over a decade, but, 2 decades ago, 3 decades ago, it was essentially 2 camps, right? Poliquin or Paul Check. Both were, with their own rights, holistic, both were cutting edge, and both, had literature, it was like, can you stand him or can you stand him? Right. And then obviously in our era, it was like, oh, there's Mr. Portal and there's, all that kind of stuff. Right. And then branching off. So there are those kind of greats essentially, but really, in all honesty, I think over the last, probably 4 or 5 years, I think all the other leaders, who I stand, in line with, essentially, like, including yourself and stuff, I'm just drawn and inspired by all those people, how you're doing things, and the ideas that you're experimenting with, whether it be your own physical practice or the way, you guys are leading. Obviously, I say this because, effectively I run a business, right? So, you have to have that in the back of your head as well, because no longer are you just looking to personally develop yourself, but you're also professionally looking to develop yourself, right? So, I'm inspired and drawn to, other leaders who are in the same boat, yeah. Does that sort of answer your question? That wasn't very many names, but
no, that's cool. What, I guess because I see, you put out like awesome stuff, and I see that it seems that you have really cool processes around your training, and it sounds like that's how your processes bleed through into the group training and what you do at the gym. And I wondered like how you develop those processes. Like, have you studied under anyone specifically before? Or have you gone into a lot of courses and you really just gone deep in taking that little bit of knowledge, practicing it yourself, and then, figuring out what it is that you think is most effective, and you put all your own ideas together? Cool. And that's kind of why I was asking before, was like, how did Vic get to where he is? Like, did he make it? Yeah. Where did you get your bits of information from? And then, did you very much, well, like everyone, you kind of make it your own at some point?
Cool. So I guess I'll kind of take you right back to like at the start of the decade when I came out of PT school. I said I was lucky enough to be mentored by a guy, and worked at a private studio, which is a big deal, for me. And, I say mentored very lightly, I learned what not to do, right? And like not how to do things, basically, of being in the business for 4.5 years. I loved what I did, what I do. But there was a certain way that, I was just like, nah, this is not how I want to do things. And this is why, I said, being drawn to you guys in terms of carving your own path, I'm passionate about obviously helping people. I'm passionate about developing myself. I'm passionate, and dedicated to improving myself, through physical, realm. And one thing that I early learned on just before starting AIM, before the physical space, was that, I tried really hard. I tried really, really hard to ask questions, trying to reach out, and I guess kind of find out, kind of how is it that, or what is the blueprint, right? Kind of, and the more I went into it, I was like, this is like, fuck, give me movement training any day. I'd rather train 6 hours a day than take this shit on, kind of, it was like, and what I realized was I was like, hang on, you just have to go with the flow, right? Kind of, it's like this is going to be an evolution, kind of, and just like the JB is like your baby, it keeps growing. It's a different iteration, right? You're not happy with what you have right now. So same thing, I've learned a bunch of stuff over the years and I continue to do so. That will never stop. My thirst to learn is never going to stop. However, kind of, it's more important for us to be able to take what we've learned and obviously be able to implement it in our own way. And that's what carving the path is, right? It's not a copy and paste. It's like, oh, that resonates. This is going to work. And again, experimenting, going with it, obviously having a tribe that, kind of you love and care for who will allow you to do that, So, we say the AIM method. The AIM method is always, be adaptable, right? Kind of its underlying principles. The whys will never be changing anytime, right? But the how and the what, guess what? Like we're happy to play with that. That could look slightly different and feel slightly different. And that's exactly, kind of our approach.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, cool.
What do you, I want to ask what you think is, working on the rings, doing handstands, getting into a bit of movement stuff like we're talking about, like, the kind of improvisational stuff that you like to do. I think it's fair to say, because we all sort of work in this realm, that when you get someone who comes in off the street and they're like, oh, I've been watching that stuff and I want to do it, often the biggest restriction for them is mobility, right? It's like, okay, cool. Yeah, you're pretty strong and whatever, and you got the desire, but your body's just a bit locked up from all those years of, whatever, sitting at a desk or bodybuilding or something. What sort of advice could you give to someone who's looking at that stuff, looking at what you're doing and like, I want to start doing a bit of that. And I'm into, yeah, I like it. Supple, savage, sounds good. I could go down that path. How can someone start to incorporate a little bit more of that, those other aspects, mobility and movement and play, into what they're doing?
It's a hard one, right? I mean, you just put me right in there. I mean, what I generally tell people, it's, simple is never sexy. Simple is never easy, right? And that's where we have to start, kind of, this is why I talked about the process, the underlying principles, they're pretty straightforward, and it's a really good question, because the way that we navigate these waters, whereby, somebody who comes in who is really adamant and really clear, quote unquote, out in where they want to be, the way we navigate that is by, that's cool. Let's take you through this process, right? Which is effectively taking you through multiple different underlying principles, right? No flexibility. Well, that would be shown, let's say, things like hanging. Shoulder stability is not quite there. Guess what? Exposing you on the rings is not going to be the safest thing right now, kind of single leg work. How do you breathe? X, Y, Z. So we give them different focus, if you like, right? So it's like, they've come in with this end goal in mind, which is cool. And like, we can definitely kind of go there, but if that's the end in mind, let's start where we are right now. And that's what we have to figure out, right? So we take them on this journey, essentially. So that's how we normally tend to kind of navigate those waters, right? So, whether it be strong, swole, savage, whatever you want to call it, kind of thing, it's okay. Do you understand? Are you aware of your own body right now? Most importantly, are you in control of your body? Then, okay, if those are a big 2 ticks, then we can just give you the right stress, right? And effectively, we have to create the right environment to basically adapt in all those areas. But the reality is, as you said, most people soon find out when they start the process, it's like, oh, okay, that's the roadblock, right? And obviously, it's our job, it's our responsibility to make the not so glamorous, and again, that can happen through the personalized work, but then also the group work, right? And that's why they're so powerful, those modalities, when you got people.
But what about for someone who's not at your gym, someone who's listening now, like, oh, I'm inspired.
I would say go reach out to JBs, because they have an amazing online way. That's a hard one, kind of, and this is it's a hard one in the sense that, like, it's a cross path that I've come many, many times, kind of on, and it's just something that, to me, the 2 ways that we want to be able to help as AIM essentially is obviously our tribe, who we see face to face and within these 4 walls. And the other way we want to impact the world is through arming coaches. So, kind of coaching coaches in order for them to kind of go and do this stuff and be able to better help, other people. And the reason I say that is because if everything is important, then nothing is important, right? And what we've been able to kind of do within these four walls is because of our tribe, running the experiments, running and finding our own, path, and, being able to modify, kind of experiments and build and stuff like that. And that's a continuous journey. It will never stop. That's our main priority. Helping other people outside, the four walls of AIM, the gem pop, if you like, for lack of a better word, as you can see from our conversation, there's so much that goes into it. Right. And rather than kind of giving like a blanket approach, because that will effectively be just training. Right. So the amount of times people will reach out and say, hey, can you do a training program for me? Can you do this, this, and that? And I'm like, hey, thanks for reaching out, bro. Unfortunately, we don't write programs, because I'm not interested in just training people. I'm interested in more coaching. I'm more interested in forming relationships and stuff like that. And, and I do see the importance of being able to share what we do within these four walls. But I want to do that through, arming other leaders, and being able to help them carve their own path, make own decisions, take ownership, and, lead themselves and those they choose to serve powerfully. So that's how, does that answer your question?
Actually, not entirely. No, I'm looking more for like advice to a young person who's, pushing weights, and they're like, hey man, I want to get into this thing. How can someone who's in that place, maybe a little bit starved for knowledge, how can they start to incorporate? And I guess I'm thinking like more along the lines of like the technical aspects of it. Like say, something that I think with your training is like, well, hey, how about this? You're doing your sets, you're doing your deads and whatever. Why don't you get some mobility in during your rest periods? That kind of thing.
Cool.
Because I guess I see like, going back to what I see is really cool about what you do is you have these broader concepts that you apply to the training, but it's also like I'm doing deadlifts because they're making me real strong. And then I'm stretching my shoulders here. It's going to make me better shoulder health and enable me to do a back bridge. Like it's also quite simple, right? That's the beauty of it.
Cool. So, I mean, this is a very, very general approach, I guess, right? It's kind of what I will start by saying is being really clear on like what the priority is, so, if it's strong, well, do things that are going to make you strong, right? And obviously then kind of, okay, well, how do I become supple? Well, where is there some space and time where I can dedicate to becoming a little more supple, right? So as you said, as an example, if I'm squatting, obviously that's my lower body, my upper body is obviously in play as well, okay, but I could probably, get away with stretching my upper body, things like that, right? So, being able to implement the strength and the flexibility work, that's cool. I guess the art is in obviously making sure you choose the right things, right? Because there's nothing worse than doing front squats and then basically stretching your, shoulders out, because you're going to have nothing in the tank to, hold that bar up, right? Same thing with deadlift. You gave the example, of doing deadlifts, then back bends. I would definitely not recommend that to anybody. However, being smart around the way we program things is effectively the way you prep for the session ahead. So whatever your priority is, so get clear on what your priority is. And the way you lead into that priority is by making sure you're looking after the whole body, right? So to become a little more supple. So as an example, let's say deadlifts, we would actually, do things like hinge walks and prime the hamstring, as we would know, right? It makes sense to kind of warm the hamstrings up. Now, traditionally in strength work, let's say deadlifting as an example, it's like my warm-up sit is like 60 kilos and I just get, warm up and then get to my working sit kind of thing, right? And if I'm really good, I may do some booty band, kind of crab walks and things like that, just to prime my hips kind of thing. But I'm talking prep, right? So it's like, okay, cool. Like that's the priority. Like what is the rest of the body doing? So what are the things that you can do consistently and frequently that isn't as of a high intensity, that is not going to take away from your strength work, because you can uphold that most of the time, So we have these bunch of stuff that we like to kind of do. We call it like, the foundational movements, if you like. which are designed in a way that isn't really high intensity, right? But will contribute over time massively in your ability, not just to be flexible, but also, stable in certain places. Things like, hanging, right? You're doing a deadlift session, hey, bro, just like hang. Grip strength, it's going to open your shoulders up, decompress the spine, whatever you want to call it, right? And, maybe just don't do passive hang. Maybe actually kind of do a couple of variations. Maybe do active passive hangs. Maybe do a couple of arch pulls or scap pulls because you're activating your lats. Guess what? Breaking the bar. That's what you need, right? But if you think about it, focus, you're extending your thoracic, so we can get nitty gritty like this, so the way we prep our body is actually how we get more supple. And then the strength work complements and does what it needs to do. Then if you have time and space, then you can come back to, again, okay, like I've done my strength bit. I have a little bit of time and space, or I have the energy. Okay, now I can go into a little bit more different flexibility protocols, which is going to help me develop in slightly different ways. Does that kind of make sense, right? So that's a deadlift example. If I was to give another example, where should we go? Let's say upper body strength session. You guys like the ring work. Let's say it's a bent. The bent out strength session, that everybody loves, the push pull, whatever kind of stuff. We will normally kind of just do all our prep work in straight arm. Right. So kind of, it's like, prepare the, obviously we need bent arm strength for anybody who doesn't know anything that just involves bending the elbows, right? So your normal push and pull type of work, think, push-ups, dips, rows and chin-ups or whatever kind of thing. But then we actually do prep work using straight arm, which is basically not bending your elbows. Right. So again, things like your scap push, scap pulls, or, simple support holds and activation work, whatever kind of stuff. So you're getting those dosages in, right? And obviously at the end of the session, then you can actually just stick onto the upper body thing, right? You can do things like German hangs. So you don't actually have to add more intensity. You can just hang, you can do skin the cat if you have the energy, right? Again, depending on your personal context. And that is just upper body. But you could then go into lower body, right? Which is, again, a whole different style, depending on what your strength session looks like. Is it more of a build? Is it more of a skill? Is it more of a, bit of both, right? That will dictate how much time and space you have, kind of in between your sets. So again, we can utilize those times smartly to then open up different areas. And also just choosing strength, exercises as your main work that is going to promote different points of flexion, right? The shortened state, the lengthened state, and things like that. So an example would be, on my squat days, my heavy squat days, guess what? I will opt in to do things like good mornings and RDLs or anything, even Nordics to a certain degree. A, because I'm going to get swole, right? But B, kind of like I'm hitting hamstrings in the lengthened state, right? So, me to touch my hand on the ground, like that's never a problem. Right. Of course, I can then focus on Jefferson curl in my upper body days, same sort of similar effect, but a slightly different context. So there are so many different ways we can implement this, and again, it comes down to being clear on what the priority is and then starting to sprinkle, kind of what you need, kind of to support, other areas as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I like that. I like the sprinkling idea, getting a little bit in, getting it across. And I think, it's still keeping the things that are most important to you as the main things, but it's just getting in a little bit of the things that maybe you haven't done that you do need, which is really what's holding everyone back, right? It's like the stuff they need is usually the stuff they're not doing. So it's like, all right, we'll get a bit of that in. And I like it. Yeah, there's a kind of an experimental aspect to it, right? Like I think I've done it myself where you're like, whatever, to use your example, you do the front squat and then you go do some shoulder stretching and then it fucks you up for the next set of. So like, I think it's, if you're training, you're like, hang on, that's not a good coupling. And that's where you start to figure it out for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Like one of my favorite couplings, again, it doesn't have to be just flexibility. It could be strength and strength, right? So one of my favorite coupling, talking about strength work in particular and movement and, let's say barbell, is deadlifts and handstands. They're completely opposite. Kind of like you're breaking the bar, your lats are engages, deadlift can be seen as a pull movement, right? Depending on how you look at it, right? Guess what? Handstands, it's isometric. So there's no bending the elbows, whatever. It is neural, but guess what? Your nervous system dictates anything, right? Or everything, right? So it's like we can actually use that as a conditioning piece, as a strength piece as well. And because of the deadlifts, kind of people recruit their bodies so much better. So they're just so much aware of their bodies too. They can translate so much more. as opposed to, you know, doing sets of just chest to walls and just being cooked and cooked and cooked. And then in the last set, you're like, I think I got it. And then trembling and then falling down the wall, you know, kind of, so you can, again, be smart with how you do things and being really clear on, like, as I said, what the project is or what your main thing is. You know, because in using that, you know, deadlift and handstand as an example, you know, they're effectively two strength works back to back. The underlying thing there is, you know, okay, it's a push and pull. The another underlying factor there is it's nervous system, it's isometric work. You know, we do touch and go deadlifts, you know, kind of tempo. So that's, you know, not bouncing, not kind of reset and stuff go. That's like hold on to the fucking barbell for 30 seconds or whatever it is practically. And there's like chest to wall for time, right? Now, when you come fresh into the day where you want to do some handstand push-up work or handstand, you know, balance work or whatever, you know, if you recovered your bandwidth, your nervous system, you have the strength, your nervous system's, you know, kind of like it's been conditioned or, you know, it's good to go kind of thing. Guess what? You can focus better on the skill type of work, right? So you can then sprinkle those kind of things in. So yeah, like again, it depends, you know, what your priority is. The only thing that I would probably say, and I'll say this to everybody, no matter who, it's like, you know, trying to chase fucking 5 different rabbits at the same time. As I said, if everything's important, then nothing is important. You know, be really clear on what the main thing is, and then you know, make that the main thing. And this is why I use the terminology projects, because you can have that main thing for 6 weeks. That's cool. And then, you know, you can use that as a sprinkler for the next thing. So it doesn't, you're not married to this shit, you know, like you're just, hey, let's date, you know, yeah, I'm vibing. Yeah, I'm good. And then you're like, fuck, just fuck off, you know, but obviously you want it. So like, you know, you're not going to marry it. You just take it to the next thing.
Man, I love it. I think that's a good place for us to wrap it up there. I think there's a huge amount of value there for anyone that's kind of getting started with the strength and movement thing, or even in it and trying to make sense of all the different modalities you can chase. I really like that point you make about keeping the main thing. It's nothing's forever, right? It's like, make this thing a project, chase this thing for a while, put the other shit on maintenance. And then once you get that, then you can let it go for a little bit and chase that thing. But it's just it's like a simplification of a process that I think for a lot of people, and we've been in ourselves, can get really confusing and murky because you do want it all, right? You want to chase all the shiny objects.
For sure. Like, keep it simple, you know, kind of like simple thinking. That's what we kind of tell all our coaches, you know, kind of like, if it's complicated and complex way of looking at things, like, guess what? That's what it's exactly going to be, right? It's going to just keep getting harder and harder. And again, we can keep getting lost, you know, kind of in the depths of like this fucking downward spiral that is, you know, this whole different modalities and training styles and all this kind of stuff. But keep things simple, because you can amplify simple. You know, kind of, this is why we talk about this, you know, kind of, what's the process? What's the underlying thing? Make that the main thing. Get ridiculously good at that. And can you carry it over? And you can just repeat that process time after time.
Vic, where can people get in touch with you and follow you on Instagram and all that stuff?
Just Vic_Hawksley, I think it is on Instagram, and, you know, info@anatomymotion.com.au, you know, kind of just say, flick us in the email.
That's cool. What's the, has the gym got its own Instagram account?
No, it doesn't. It's funny, huh? Like, kind of, no, it doesn't. So the other place, you know, if you're a coach, you know, AIM Academy, that's our handle. So we help coaches, you know, kind of, and we run coaches development program. And, you know, so if you're a coach, you know, who's looking to get into this style of training, strength and movement, as we call it, you know, we effectively kind of teach people from the ground up, you know, in our method. So these underlying principles we spoke about, you know, how do we kind of, you know, what movements do we use in the different contexts and things like that. So we do actually do coaching as opposed to programming. So, you know, if you're a coach, you can get involved with that. So yeah.
A true savage, bro. A true savage.
It takes one to know one.
Oh.
Real recognize real. I pretty much drop that call every day. But no, it's mate, the stuff you're doing is fucking cool. We look at it, and when T was at the gym with, you know, like, T's not on the call. He's gone to meet counsel at his new gym space in Darwin today. But it's always like, fuck, did you see what Vic's doing, man? Jesus. Gee, how's he do that? Oh, guy's so strong. So it's, you know, your reach makes it all the way to the other side of the bridge down to Botany. I just want you to know that.
Oh, hell yeah.
Amazing. The dark side. I'm glad I'm over to the dark side. That's cool. I know T's on the call. I just want to give him a shout out to kind of, I reached out to him early in the week, and he kindly kind of, he was like, yeah, man, reach out. He made some time for me. So as I said, kind of boys, thank you. Kind of you guys, as I said, you've been a huge inspiration for myself and what AIM is. And thank you for having me on today,
mate. Absolute pleasure, and thank you. We're honored that whatever we could provide some inspiration there. It's a true honor of ours.
Absolutely. There's quite a few people out there that you're their man crush, and I thought to let you know because someone starting with D and ending with Illan was like, "Oh, Nick's on today, man crush."
I'll get my Vaseline.
The love does make it well and truly down here.
Cool.
All right, my bro. Thank you so much, guys. For anyone listening, Vic dropped his handles there. If you want to get in touch, even just look at what he's doing, jump on his Instagram account. It's super inspiring. He's got the coaches course. Check out AIM Academy. And obviously, if you need anything from us, junglebrothers.com. We'll hook you up, look after you, whatever you need, strength, movement, coaching, that sort of thing. Thank you for listening. If you liked the episode, please share it with a friend. Young coaches, young up-and-comers in the fitness industry would probably love to hear that discussion. So please help to support the show. Thank you for listening. We'll see you all next week. Paul and Vic, I will see you guys next time.
Peace.
Thanks.